Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall. And Clay, we're the media. I'm not sure we have to stick to the protocol this week, but it is Michigan week. Michigan week, correct?
That's it. I mean, there is that little special something about this game. You've covered, I don't know how many of them.
40-something.
There you go. And I've been going to the big house, though Buckeye fans don't often refer to it.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about your childhood there growing up in the sticks. Go ahead now.
No, since 95. And so I know my way around, all the big shows will be there, and it's another great opportunity. And I just think there's a vibe. Ohio State's not out to prove we're the toughest. We're just going to win the game. And everybody is, as Ryan Day attested in the post game, you could tell fourth quarter, everybody's talking about it on the sideline. Yeah. So it is here.
Yeah, fourth quarter, of course, of the 42-9 win over Rutgers. People have asked me about that game a lot, and I keep explaining to them that was a typical Rutgers getting its butt beat loss from the standpoint of they play hard. They have always played hard under Greg Schiano, but it's just like they look up and they're in the game. It's 7-3, or excuse me. Whatever the word, then all of a sudden there's another touchdown by Ohio State.
14.
And then all of a sudden it's there's another touchdown. Ohio State's up 21 to what, 3?
3.
And then you look up at the end of the game and it's 42-9. That's a typical Rutgers loss because they're playing hard. They just don't have across the board the Jimmies and the Joes to go toe to toe, a mano a mano. Mano, that's hand to hand. Mano e mano is hand and hand. I don't understand how people mix that up. But the bottom line is they just don't have it to go with Ohio State for 60 minutes. Maybe not even 30 minutes, but they still play hard, right?
They play hard. They're physical and they have a plan. And Schiano's no dummy. It's just in the end they can't hang.
So right.
None of these OSU Rutgers games have been close since they've entered the Big Ten.
No. Yeah, exactly. And it's the second tour of Greg Schiano. So there we covered the Rutgers game. 42-9 as expected. Ohio State once again beats the spread. Ohio State moves to 11-0 on the season. And 3 games ago, they were 8-0 with exclamation point. And now they're 11-0, probably will still be number 1. We're recording this on Monday, probably still be number 1 in the college football playoff rankings. Everybody could see there was some kind of, but will it be number 1 with an exclamation point? Or will it be number 1 with a couple of question marks and an exclamation point? Because everybody could watching on Saturday could see there was some kind of pizzazz missing. Quick strike pizzazz that when Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are missing from the lineup, it became a little bit pedestrian. Still a fast walking pedestrian because they averaged almost 7 yards a carry running the ball.
They did.
And just methodically beat down Rutgers by running the football. And you finally saw James Peoples rip off a 49-yard touchdown run, which is, I asked Ryan after the game, does that qualify now as a home run by a running back? Yes, it does. But the bottom line is they haven't run the ball, I guess, for the last several weeks, like against the defense they're going to try to run it against on Saturday at Michigan in Ann Arbor. And so you take all of this with a grain of salt, just like Michigan's win over Maryland. It was lopsided, but they beat Maryland.
Yep. Tough year for the Terps.
Both of these teams have been a while since they played anybody that you would call a big-time opponent. And, of course, the last time Michigan did that, they got whacked by USC. Yeah, USC running the ball.
That's it. It wasn't close.
Yeah.
And nor was their other loss. So, yeah, I mean,
talking about 2 Oklahoma, ladies and gentlemen, which is turned out to be a pretty credible entity now as we head into the last week of the regular season.
Yeah, the Sooners are 9-2. Michigan runs it they're going to run the ball, and they'll probably be successful with it to some extent. 223 yards a game.
Yeah.
On an
Save some of
average.
those stats now. We're going to talk about the game for Friday's show.
All right.
I know you get worked up.
I get, yeah. Well, I'm coming off that Cowboy high, so now I'm all revved up.
And you know what? There's no, like we've said this a million times on this show. I grew up an Alabama fan, but then I kind of grew out of it. You know what I mean? You grew up a Mississippi State fan, and I know that while we're talking about the game and all the ramifications and the number one team in the country, Ohio State, you've got visions of the Egg Bowl going your way big time on Thursday or Friday.
It's Friday at noon. But
Friday at noon.
I really don't. Like you grew out of it. The last 5 years, I've just kind of
matriculated out of it.
It just, yeah. And
ladies and gentlemen,
Mississippi State is a baseball school.
Ladies and gentlemen, truth in advertising. And when I walked into the studio, as usual, Clay beat me to the studio because
he does all the work.
Yeah.
I can get here.
Yeah, right. But the point is, he was watching highlights, highlights of fights from the Egg Bowls past.
Yeah.
Including was it the Ole Miss guy that lifted his leg, or was that Mississippi State?
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss guy lifted his leg like he was relieving himself on the fire hydrant like a good dog. And then, boy, did that come back to bite him.
Setting up a 45-yard extra point wide right.
The point is, rivalries still matter.
Oh, my goodness.
And Alabama-Auburn's still a big game to me, only because, you grew up in Alabama. You either love Alabama or you love Auburn. And Troy State, I don't know if they're in it or not. No, I'm messing. Alabama or Auburn. And, we loved it. We rejoiced when Alabama beat Auburn. But now, really, it doesn't mean anywhere near to me what it used to mean.
Well, Alabama usually, I
think it went around my baby brother, who's going to be 68, because he still gets up and paces, and then when Alabama got beat here recently, wow, that was tough on him. But
right.
But go ahead.
There was something on social today, a poll. Would you take a win over Michigan, but you don't win the national championship, or the reverse of losing that game, but taking the national title? And I punched, and it was 95% want to win the national title.
Yeah.
And that's Ohio State fans conceding now.
Yeah.
That game is past us.
You know why?
And that's ridiculous.
The national championship is symbolic of having a great season. The game now is symbolic of having a great day. Big difference. John U. Bacon.
Not if you're a
John U. Bacon, Michigan historian, has written all kinds of books, including the latest one about the Gales of November, which, by the way, is not about the last 4 years in the Ohio State-Michigan series, but it's about the Edmund Fitzgerald, number 7 on the New York Times bookseller list right now as we speak. I'm going to have him on Friday's show. We've already recorded it, but we always have a great conversation. John U. Bacon, one of my favorite people in the world. But we talk about a little bit about that, but it doesn't diminish the importance of the game. Is still important for the day and for bragging rights, but it doesn't diminish the fact that this is going to be another huge game in the sense of what's at stake for Ohio State. It's going 12-0 and moving on assuredly to the Big Ten championship game. Whereas there could be some doubt if Ohio State gets beat. I'm not going to go through all those scenarios. We'll do that Friday of what could keep Ohio State out of the Big Ten championship game against Indiana, and whether Indiana faces some jeopardy in that regard. Indiana does too, but they're playing for the Old Oaken bucket against Purdue this week. Everybody expects that to be a lopsided bucket. But we'll see how that goes. But the bottom line is what we talk about is, how the world, college football has changed, but you still want to win this game in the worst way or the best way.
Yeah, I think it's just you're so invested emotionally, you can't go through the pain of another loss, and I get that.
Right.
When I lived and breathed that other game, I was out of commission for a week, and my wife would be like, "It's a game, hon. What's your?" I said, "You're just not." Anyway.
Okay.
Anyway, so
there you go.
No, we're still good, and I understand. I understand people not wanting to, set themselves up, but
let's get to my conversation, my usual conversation. In a minute, we're going to get to my usual conversation with Xatt WilhelX, who was part of 2 losses to Michigan and then 2 wins over Michigan once Jim Tressel took over in 2001, and how that turned and why that turned as he looked back on it, etc. By the way, one of the hints is you got to make plays. you got to block well and tackle well and make plays. I mean, there's no secret sauce when it comes to that. The secret sauce is being focused, but not overly so where you over try, et cetera. So we'll get into that, what Jim Tressel brought to it. But first, let's get back to the little post-game sound with Ryan Day, right out of the gate in the post-game press conference. When we started talking about the Rutgers game, it was more of, like we talked about a while ago, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate both missing from the lineup for the first time in 2 years, both of them missing from the lineup, and kind of like what that meant as far as he looked at it. And it'll morph on into like some other sound here about crediting, this team for keeping its focus through the year and stuff. And then, and then some other stuff, but it's always important to hear from Coach Ryan Day just on kind of what's going through his mind, because we all know his record is 1-4 against the team up north. The streak is 0-4 over the previous 4 meetings, which has also meant Ohio State has not played in the Big Ten championship game since 2020. The folks at St. Elmo's knew your name by heart, didn't they? By the time you'd show up there every Friday night before a Big Ten championship game.
Let me tell you one thing. Surveillance and COVID changed this rivalry. If it had been a level playing field, if Michigan had suited up with their 42 guys in, 20, when they said they couldn't field a team. Anyway, let's proceed. I got to get to 2025.
There are so many things you want to get off your chest and your back. It's like
surveillance.
It's kind of like watching COVID. one of those trick parachutists who jumps out at like 9,000 feet and keeps wowing the crowd with a chute that doesn't open, but it wasn't supposed to. And then the next one, he gets that off his chest. It wasn't supposed to open. It wasn't supposed to open, but it wasn't supposed to open. But there you go. And then another one. It's like kind of like that's kind of like watching you free fall, man.
And when would he pull the chute? Pull the ripcord?
Just before ground zero.
Just before.
Yeah.
Woo.
So anyway.
All right.
Let's get to this sound with Ryan Day talking about, how they kind of adjusted, for another term. They knew they probably weren't going to have either one of them for the game, the week prep, even though Jeremiah Smith had played the week before. We believe Jeremiah Smith has, in essence, a quad muscle strain or sprain, more of a strain or whatever, bruising, deep bruising, whatever it is, which is the muscle, the big muscle that shows you have powerful legs just above your knee. And then, of course, we think Carnell Tate's dealing with a calf muscle strain that you always got to be careful with those, because the calf muscle is part of it's connected to the Achilles, and you don't want anything messing with the Achilles. So, yeah, they were held out because of a grand degree of caution. So let's get to what Ryan Day said right after the game on Saturday, and in jumping forward to the game on Saturday at Ann Arbor.
The only thing I'll say really is that, they are day to day, and, the staff and those guys are working really hard. Let's get ready to play next week.
Over here to the left, Joe.
No, but sorry, but I'm just talking about the week and everything. I felt like, the guys had a really good week of work in terms of focus, and it was an opportunity for guys to step up in different ways. And so, whether it was defense, special teams, or on offense, nobody really flinched. It was like, come on, let's go play. And I think that's been sort of the approach of this team and this coaching staff. So, it'll be the same way this week, and those guys got to fight like heck to get back on the field. But I thought the guys played hard today. I thought, I think the running game averaged just under 7 yards a carry, and then I think on 35 rushing attempts, we held them to 66 yards. So, that was really well done. And, they came out, fresh, and they had a couple of things for us that were a little bit different, coming off the bye week. But I thought our guys handled it again, sort of businesslike. So overall, that was well done. There's obviously things that, if we think we're going to get away with fumbling the ball on the yard line, putting the ball on the turf, that's going to cost us a game. We know that can happen. But overall, there was a physicality in the game that I thought, was set from the jump. And again, for the seniors, can't thank them enough publicly. I've done it before, but I want to do it again. The true warriors on the field and everything they've done, because they put it on the field. They're the ones. And so, on behalf of everybody at Ohio State, these seniors deserve to be thanked for what they've done, and certainly what they've done for me and my family and all the coaches and for the brothers. And that's why it was our obligation to make sure we did our best for them to make sure that their last game on the field was special. And I think they had a great game. They played hard, and guys like Caden Curry, what a great play he had. So great to see them, finish out senior day with a win like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Caden Curry. Oh my goodness.
I think that kid's going to wear the cape on Saturday.
All we know is there's an opportunity for us maybe in a couple of weeks, and we're not going to let that cat out of the bag, so to speak.
Right,
but,
right.
It'd be interesting if it happens. But the bottom line is, Caden Curry's played on a different level.
He's come, boy.
Don't discount desire. Do not discount desire and the fire that some of these guys have in their belly to set the record straight finally, because they've watched several, Caden Curry's been there, 4 years? He's watched 3 others not get the gold pants.
Yep.
And of course, he didn't get any either because of it. But 3 other groups of players go out without the gold pants, without playing for a Big Ten championship, which, by the way, would be in his quasi-hometown area, Indianapolis.
Right.
How much that guy wants to get back is pretty palpable, I think, for everybody. But let's get to some more sound here from Ryan Day, just talking about all kinds of things, after that win over Rutgers.
Preview what's going to come next week. Yeah, I do. I give the guys a lot of credit for focusing, and I think not having both Carnell and Jeremiah allows us to focus even a little bit more on the job at hand. Whether that really played into it or not, I don't know, but our guys have been pretty consistent that way. So now, this week has got to be the best. We've been working toward this all year, and we want it. We know that the opponent is different. We know what's at stake. We know we're playing for hardware now. But at the end of the day, it's still about us. We can't all of a sudden change things. And so we want to keep it as routine as we can, knowing that, again, now we're playing for hardware. And not only gold pants, but also an opportunity to get the Indy.
Yeah, I mean, the gold pants, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Finkus and Jim Lachey want to get back in the gold pants business.
Yeah.
Passing those out after big wins. So, yeah, Matt put a little sack dance on social this morning, kind of got me a little revved up. And so he's ready. He's sending his well wishes, as so many former players do. And I know some head coaches use that a lot. Some don't use it much, but
hey, use what you can use, right?
Bingo.
Ryan Day is trying to make this, we'll get into him talking about it, trying to make this as regular a week schedule-wise as you can make it. But the emphasis has been there all along on everybody knows what's at stake. Everybody knows what's up. Everybody knows gold pants haven't been around for a while. They may have even lost the mold for them. Who knows? They may have. Finkus and Lachey and those guys may have accumulated them a cache.
A stockpile.
A stockpile, a cache, CACHE of them.
There you go.
So they can quickly pivot if in fact it happens. But let's get to a little bit more sound of Ryan Day, just kind of like talking about the focus.
Yeah, they're always in the back of our mind in terms of what we're working towards. We know this is the last game of the year and what it means to everybody here. So, it doesn't take long in the fourth quarter once the game was in hand to everybody start figuring out, this thing's coming fast. And it was just a good look at everybody's eye in the locker room, man. We're excited about this one and just need to focus on, what really matters, and that's everybody just doing their job and going on the road, and what's going to be a great environment and going to get it done. So that'll be the focus, and we'll continue to do what we've done all year. That's it. Have a great week and focus on that day. And coach's job, is to give them a great plan And we got to be at our best. Everybody has to be at their best and play really, really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the interesting thing about it is that screen went a little bit blank there, but that's just because I'm not as quick on my upstart as I could be. But the bottom line is, yeah, all you can do is all you can do, right? And
it's always,
we're going to talk about this ad nauseum, but I mean, there's no pixie dust, there's no magic wand. Guys have got to go out, like Ryan was saying. You can't be fumbling at the 1 yard line like what happened to Ohio State's first drive against Rutgers. I mean, that game looked like a 49-9 game, not a 42-9, but it was what it was. But you can't be making huge mistakes. But you can't also say to yourself, "Oh no, we just made a huge mistake. We're not going to win now." You can't be thinking like that either, right?
No, even if it happens on Saturday, there's so much that goes into this game. I'll save it for Friday. Because you're going to tell me to save it for Friday.
Well, no, but I just was guilty of it again because once you start thinking about it, I mean, Rutgers, who cares almost, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the 11th win. That's what that matters. But let's get a little bit more sound here.
Over here to the right, Stefan Kreisky.
Yes, Ryan, to build up to that, talk about it being in the back of your mind. This is a senior class that hasn't gotten gold pans, hasn't won in Indianapolis yet, and they've talked about that being a goal for them. What have you thought of the way they've kind of compartmentalized that, throughout these weeks to get to this point, understanding what they had to take care of in order to get gold pans, get to Indy, and all the rest down the road?
Well, yeah, you've heard us talk about this, really focusing on the process, because it's easy to just say, I want to get to the last game of the year, but if that happens and you get distracted, you get upset, and then all of a sudden your season can take a turn bad. I feel like we focused on us. I felt like we've been consistent in our approach, and so now, but that's all in preparation for this week, and so we have to continue to do that very thing, and that's what it's going to be. But to your point, I think when we talked about chopper wood and carrying water from the jump, like that's what this was about. To making sure that we weren't just saying, hey, let's just get to the end of the year and everything that comes with it. And so now we go. But along the way, when you think about how fast the season's gone, it seems like it's gone really, really fast. But then again, you think about that first game against Texas, and that seems like a year ago. Just how different this team is now from when it first started. And so all the work that we put in is now got to show for us, and that'll be the focus.
Yeah, that'll be the focus this week. I mean, like he said, the year has gone fast. The season has gone fast. But really the year, think about it, man. It seems like 2 weeks ago we were watching spring football. We're watching Bo Jackson. Man, wow, imagine that name. And then Bo Jackson, wow, he's got game. He's got Bo's game.
Or we were doing that walk down the concourse in the shoe, starting this very thing. I think
with that shaky camera.
Was that late?
That was
August,
that was a Clay May report. It was
and
we got a lot. I think we got a lot of looks on that video because it was so what? It was like we were in a tempest. We were caught in a tempest there. The way my shaky camera worked on that. But you're exactly right. I mean,
but you've refined the game now.
Yeah, well, I don't do that anymore. Yeah, I don't get in the tempest anymore. I avoid the tempest. But
tempest in the
but I don't know. We may bring back the handheld walk and talk is what I wanted to call it. I just didn't know it was going to be walk and dizzy talk. But especially for people watching it. But it did become quite a sensation. So whatever gets the clicks, right?
There you go.
But the bottom line is, I mean, there you go. These are players now. It's going to be up to the players finally on Saturday to get the job done. And speaking of players.
Oh, you're going to. Oh.
What?
All right. It's time for the.
What?
Mondays.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But speaking of players, I mean, this guy was celebrated. He was an All-American. He was a linebacker at Ohio State. I say this every week. People should know this by now on Mondays, with Xatt WilhelX. Xatt WilhelX was a big-time linebacker, national champion linebacker on the 2002 team. But you know what? His experience with the game wasn't that great from the start. And then there was a change of coaches from John Cooper to Jim Tressel. And definitely the worm turned in the series. So we'll talk, obviously he was part of a Super Bowl winning team with the Green Bay Packers also, but like I said, also twice there. So that's 3 times I said it in the span of like 11 words. But the bottom line is, let's just get to our weekly conversation with Xatt Wilhelm and what this game means. And that includes a little bit of jocularity at the beginning. Oh my goodness, I look forward to this every week. I guess this week it's called Undies. Undie with Xatt Wilhelm.
Yes, that's correct.
Do I have that correct? Undie with Xatt Wilhelm, ladies and gentlemen, former All-American linebacker at Ohio State, national champion at Ohio State. I don't need to go through your credentials every week, but I think it's important this week, Xatt. I think it's important this week because you got some gold pants.
I do.
You've got a Super Bowl Super Bowl trophy and picture and ring and everything of great accomplishments as a college player and a pro player. As Ryan Day pointed out, and several of the players have pointed out, Caden Curry did this last week. He doesn't have a pair of gold pants. He doesn't have a Big Ten championship ring or trophy or whatever else goes with that, the regalia of that. He does have a national, oddly, he and several of his older brethren on the team have a national championship ring,
Yeah.
Pictures. But so just in a nutshell, Ohio State beat Rutgers 42-9. There, that game's covered. They did it without their top 2 receivers. That part's covered so far. But what I wanted to ask you is, how important do you think this week is in the life of a Caden Curry and some of these older guys on this Ohio State football team? They're number 1 in the country. They're number 1 in the championship, college football playoff championship ratings, without a doubt. Although who knows, this week there may be a little bit of doubt since they played without their top 2 receivers, but they still won convincingly. And then they're going into playing a team this week called Michigan, who they've never beaten as collegians. As Ryan Day pointed out, this team has not played since 2020 in the Big Ten championship game and has not beaten Michigan since 2019. How big a moment is this for these players?
I think it's a huge moment. And I think I go back to the, freshman or the committed or enrolled Caden Curry, just to use him as an example.
Yeah.
And you start to talk to these young men about their goals and their why, especially for a kid, coming from Texas or coming from out of state, who's got to learn very quickly, what it means to be a Buckeye. And what it means to be a Buckeye is, that overemphasis on beating that team up north. And for the guys that, haven't done it, it's the monkey on the back, the gorilla on the shoulders, I guess you could say at this point, along with, playing in the Big Ten championship, let alone winning one. And I think if you go back to these young men and you talk about, as everybody does, you set goals. Why do you want to go to Ohio State? Well, I want to be developed. I want to beat that team up north. I want to win a Big Ten, and I want to play in or win in a national championship. Right.
Yeah.
And to your point, you sometimes got the hardest one, and that ring with in a national championship. And in some cases, what you thought it would take to get that ring was doing those other 2 things that for this class has evaded them, which is beating that team up north and playing and winning a Big Ten championship. And I think it's going to mean more, and I think even for the out-of-state guys, and again, those guys in time become indoctrinated, and especially, for myself, who knows what it means as an Ohio boy. But even just, being down this past weekend, with Mason, my son, committed to Ohio State, and seeing, and it is this week, but it's no different than any other week with how many times you see it up on a wall, the game and all its history and that clock up on the wall.
Yeah.
And then, and that's for, say the commoners or civilians who make it through the first pathway of security. And, that's the recruits, and that's maybe some priority visitors that get down that main hallway. But then when you get into the inner workings of the Woody, where it's players and coaches and trainers and doctors only, there's an entire, probably, 40 by 40 foot wall with, pictures and another clock and the game and the X over the M and all those other things. So it's like, it is something you walk by every single day as a Buckeye football player. And now it's the payoff. And I'll be truthfully, it's like, Caden Curry, and I know I've said this probably as a Buckeye commit and then a player, whatever. It's like, Buckeye Nation would be satisfied with, 1-11, as long as that one is against that team up north. But in this case, I think going back to the goals, not to be way too long-winded, but like the goal for Caden Curry and the goal for Sonny Styles and Lorenzo Styles coming to is not to be 11-0. Like, it's not, oh, I want to go undefeated, or I want to enter into the Michigan game undefeated. Of course you always do, because at Ohio State, the goal is to never lose. The goal is to win everyone you line up and play against an opponent, and that's the competition aspect. But the goal is not to go undefeated. The goal is to beat that team up north. I almost made the mistake, which then in many cases puts you in a situation to compete and win a Big Ten championship, which then in today's landscape projects you forward into the CFP4 or the CFP12, which is the current landscape that we're set up for.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's everything. But imagine having that one thing that everybody was taking for granted 6 years ago. Everyone was taking for granted that the worm had turned irrevocably, or irreversibly, I guess would be the turn, staying in that analogy, in the game. And in fact, just to have it smacked right in your face. First, you think, as you look back on it now, first because of they were cheating, or, whatever term you want to throw in there. Bottom line is they still had to make plays, both, but my point is to have that now you're looking here and in your rearview mirror is a national championship over here and no wins over Michigan over here 4 or 5 years later. That's got to be, that's crazy. I mean, it's surreal in a lot of respects to think it could go on as long as it has. And it's happened for different reasons. You could claim first couple of losses were because of cheating by Michigan, but the last two really, what's that all about, right? And so if you're Ryan Day right now, what are you thinking here early in this week?
That's a great question. And I think, early in the week, late in the week, I don't think Ryan Day's mentality
changes,
changes at all. And it probably hasn't changed since they lined up, against, in week 1 with the emphasis of taking care of business 11 times before you have this opportunity. But I think my biggest takeaway as it relates to this game, and it's not even so much the team, just to specifically speak of Ryan Day in this scenario, is and everyone, we've talked about it all year long. We've from a leadership standpoint, from a tenacity, from a business like Ryan Day, yes, it'll get cranked and the emphasis is going to be higher this week because of what's at stake and who we're playing. But I think the same way the loss to that team up north at home and how it galvanized, those seniors who hadn't beat them to then put together the run that we went on to go win that national championship. I think everyone, national media, regional media, yourself and your crew there locally that, meets with him, once or twice a week before the game and end of the week. It's like Ryan Day is different. Ryan Day is consistently evolving into, this greater, more business-like version, while being a football genius and leader of, he's evolving as a head football coach because of the past history. And in many cases, the shortcomings, not in big games, just in this game. And so he and his staff will, I don't think flip anything on its head, but are consistently learning. And again, here's the best way to say it is, like Ryan Day is like AI, constantly learning, constantly evolving to spit out the best product possible, in that next week.
Yeah.
It's never staying the same, and I think, that's who he is. And I think that's, in many cases, those are the players that he recruits. That's what this locker room is made up of. That's what the staff follows the lead of its alpha leader, that is Ryan Day. And so, without directly saying the result of this game is going to be, we all want the win. I just feel there's going to be a different approach, without putting my thumb on what that looks like, because of past history from, of Ryan Day in this game and his approach, either overemphasizing it, which, in many cases, I'm sure he can even say that he has, which has put pressure on the players in that big moment or the coaches, is like, but you also just can't treat it like any other game.
Right.
So it's that happy medium, that I think because of the lack of success in this game, but all the successes around this game that Ryan Day has had, that will be the culmination in this coming Saturday's rivalry against that team up north.
The thing, how do you know what the right approach is? I mean, this was always, I wanted to ask you as a player, this, because y'all didn't beat Michigan every year you were there, but you were there, what?
0-2 with John Cooper and 2-0
Right.
with Jim Tressel.
And yeah. So you split them, and so just real quickly, in a nutshell, what was the difference between John Cooper, who was 2-10-1 against Michigan, as I once described him, his career at Ohio State as a head coach? He's second winningest coach in Ohio State history. His career was like a brilliant scarlet tie with a splotch of mustard in the middle of it. You know what I mean? That he spilled. Everybody involved spilled, but he was a lightning rod. What did you see was the difference between John Cooper in 2000 and Jim Tressel in 2001? Because you know what? That was an average, if not mediocre season in 2001, but y'all did beat Michigan. So
correct.
What was the difference?
The greatest trade, again, and I think it's, even just being down in Columbus with, some of the coaches on staff who've never played in the rivalry, that we got to, spend some time with, they asked that very same question. And really what it is, what I thought Jim Tressel did was he emphasized this game 365 days a year, so that Michigan in some way, shape, and form, or that team up north rather, was on, there was never a massive void of time where you didn't watch. And I think that's the one thing that I probably detailed before in the past, going into this football game with you and I is, Coach Tressel would, win or loss, we would watch the prior year's game in like one drive at a time. Say there's 16, 18 drives in a football game between offense and defense, and then you include maybe special teams, like just punt, just kickoff return. And we would watch 2 plays, 4 plays, a whole 8-play drive, just little snippets of the game. And again, these very cliche things would get popped up, but it was, at the end of the day, it's a game of inches, which we found out, in some of our wins, with JT Barrett on the QB keep, the game of, right. Exactly. Also at the end of the day in this game, it's blocking. I hate to say it. It's blocking and tackling. Yeah. It's the best tackling team, the defense that fits versus the run best, it's the little things. And I think that's what Coach Tressel emphasized in this about this football game that maybe was kind of overlooked in many cases. And I know that, again, love John Cooper. He's a lot of the reason why I was a Buckeye, but in many cases, towards the end, yes, he didn't beat them, but he also didn't treat this with this like unwavering emphasis. And that, naturally probably led to some of the 2-8-1 record against that team up north. And Jim Tressel came in and just naturally, emphasized it consistently to the point where whether you were from Florida, California, or you're a kid from Columbus who knows every single detail about this rivalry, it was ingrained in your brain what this means to play in this football game, win this football game, not only for you and that set of gold pants that you have, but then the city, the state, and the alumni that now reside all over the world. And, that we want to win this game significantly more than they do.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. I mean, obviously, one of the things Jim Tressel did from the get-go as the new head coach at Ohio State was he emphasized, like you said, the little things. He emphasized the history of Ohio State football, and especially the history in the game, because it decided so much Big Ten history, in starting in, basically starting in the 50s, but
that's what's crazy. Columbus and Ohio State football are extremely unique because you have kids from Florida, Georgia,
right.
California, Texas, and they might have grown up with Florida State, Florida, or they might have grown up with Alabama, Auburn, or maybe they grow up with, with
UCLA, USC,
US, yeah, or Texas, Texas A&M, or whatever it is.
yeah,
But when you come to Ohio State, and Urban Meyer said it best, it's not just the best rivalry in college football. It may be, or is likely, the greatest rivalry in all of sport.
yeah,
So while they grew up close to Georgia Tech, that's great. That's awesome. This one's different. And that education that has to happen, and that switch that has to get flipped emotionally, physically, what this game represents, and and how close it is in many years, and what it comes down to, and what it takes, is different sometimes than it is in those other rivalries, and that's what separates this.
yeah. So let's just stick with a Caden Curry as an example. He played in that game. I mean, he obviously Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau were the starting defensive ends and stuff for last year. I mean, he understands the ferocity of it. There were some great defense played in that game last year, but ultimately they came up short, even defensively last year, when they could have still stopped them. You know what I mean? And so where you came up short. So how does that translate to this year? Meaning, is it just given that 0.101% that maybe you missed out on last year? I'm talking about for any player in this game. Caleb Downs was in that game last year.
Sure.
Caleb Downs made as great a safety he's ever played at Ohio State.
Yep.
They still didn't get it done.
Right.
So what is he thinking?
That's a great question. I think,
like you said, you were part of 2 losses to Michigan, and then you weren't. Then y'all won out, your last 2 years. Go ahead.
Well, I think to go back to the Caden, if we're going to use Caden Curry as an example, with JTT and with Jack Sawyer and Ty Leak and Ty Hamilton, all those guys, is like, I think while not participating at an immense level last year because of those guys, what you got to see was the hurt in the loss.
Yeah.
And, and of course what ensued after the game, with the fighting and whatever, really where you see that hurt.
The flag planting.
Sure. But where you see the hurt is them walking off the field. Where you get to see that hurt is in the locker room with, a senior never participating in this game ever again, with his face in his hands, emotional about the fact that you never got to beat that team. And you never got to beat the team on the biggest stage, undefeated, which you thought would affect your ability to go, play, which it did, play in the Big Ten championship game, and then your ability to go win a national championship. So it's why it's rivalry weekend. It's why it's at 12 noon on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. It's why for them and for us, with regardless of what your records are, why they get thrown out, because it's a date that's been circled, for the last 5 years, last 4 years, every single Saturday after Thanksgiving is circled on your, regardless of what you do prior, it's different. And I think also to go back to, again, being in that building and walking by the number of guys that have won awards, and walking by the number of faces that are, first round draft picks, or walking by, the number of guys playing in the NFL, that's fantastic. And that can, you go, it's just a lot of guys. But then there's this wall that you walk by every single day that is it's this overemphasis about one opponent, the game. Yeah. And I think to have these guys, walk by that every day, and to say that they've never come up on the winning side of that game. You and I, but both in Buckeye Nation, just hopes that Ryan Day is evolving, which I think he is, and as we've seen in the last 12 months, from this point forward, the evolution and that application for him as our leader, and the faith we have in him and this staff and this team, who's unblemished right now to this point, with the best defense in college football, and Matt Patricia and Brian Hartline, and our weapons that we hope are rested and ready to compete and go take this win up in Ann Arbor.
Boy, you put that succinctly. Our weapons hope are rested, and we'll get to that in a second. There was a video that circulated during sort of the or the scramble. It's more like a scrum than it was a fight, going on post game, but of Ryan Day just sort of standing there passively, almost watching it. And while Keenan Bailey's trying to calm down Jack Sawyer, who got so upset about the flag planting, Jack Sawyer earned, I would think, with former players and stuff, a spot in their heart forever. Forget about the play against Texas. A spot in their heart forever with how much that meant to him, and how you can't let that happen. And but I think I wouldn't call it necessarily an inappropriate video of Ryan Day standing there, but Ryan Day, instead of just jumping into it, right? Ryan Day had to be standing there like somebody had just shot him through the heart. I mean,
Yeah,
the shot.
you're paralyzed to a certain extent.
Correct. And but what the most interesting part of it was, he saw how much that meant, man, to some of those players, what happened there. And as Brandon Ennis said a couple of weeks ago, he's been different. You know, the meeting with the players, but he was different before he went into the meeting. There was something a little bit different about him that has carried through. And first, I want to ask you this part. Have you noticed that too? But then I want to talk about you had a face-to-face meeting with him with your son Mason.
Yes.
On, was it Saturday afternoon or Sunday?
Sunday afternoon. Yes.
Sunday. And on Mason's official visit, now that he's committed to Ohio State too. Well, let's just jump into that. What do you see about Ryan that just impresses you now?
Well, I think that's and again, in many cases, well, I think winning the national championship. The one thing that changes, that I think that I see in Ryan Day now, and that he probably has known, throughout his tenure in the, say, previous years, but maybe it just finally sunk in, after last season, is that, and it's not that he didn't know what that game means,
of course he does,
but it's like, but he also, I think he also understands the severity of how your season can swing, in the bow based on the result of this one game.
Yeah.
And it's also why I go back to, use the Kenny and Curry analogy. It's like, cool, 11-0 is awesome. But 11-1 and the loss to this team, is and again, you can go on and still potentially play in the Big Ten championship, but you're going to need help. And you're going to go in and probably not be the number one seed in the college football playoff. And you can go win a national championship, because we saw it happen. But I think, and again, and I think there's, and that's the last thing I'll say is to go back to your point about Brandon Enos and marrying it up with what I kind of see from Ryan Day is there's a difference in everybody, because the leader is different.
Yeah.
The coaches, are now at chasing the level of intensity and business mentality of Ryan Day. And then you have the players chasing that of their coaches and that of their leader in Ryan Day. And I just believe it goes back to, some of the challenges that we've had, for a period of time in certain games that have never allowed us to walk away with, this like Scott clean 49-0 victory where the defense gives up 160 with 50 on the ground and 5 sacks, and we throw for 400 and rush for 200. Yeah. It just hasn't been this team. And that's okay. Why? You've maintained the greatest stat thus far is a 0 in the loss column. And so there's again, I've talked about it, there's a hunger about this team to want to fix it, to want to get better. I think the evolution, to go back just briefly, having been at the game and then looking even statistically, preparing for this call, is just like, our ability to run the football, Bo Jackson going over 100 yards for the 5th time. Those are things that are needed in the game. The fact that, Julian Sayin can, be protected and throw the football to Max Clare and doesn't need, in this game, his two best targets, and it makes us look a little bit different. But if Michigan comes ready for something against Jeremiah, and when he's healthy, or Carnell Tate, we can lean heavily on Max Clare. I thought we saw some boots and waggles because we can run the football that just continue to layer this offense. And then you also, for Buckeye Nation, you go, well, what does those layers look like when you get the 2 best receivers potentially in all of college football back with the most accurate passer in all of college football? against that team up north on the road, and you start to depict a team, they're not just going to go in there and roll because it's going to be a battle, right?
Oh, yeah.
But a team that you can confidently get behind because it's leader down. We're dialed, and we're different, and we've gone about this significantly different than we've ever gone.
Yeah. A little waggle action now and then is relished by the best of men. I've always loved the term waggle because you know what? The 99 times out of 100, the tight end breaks out with at least 3 yards of clearance.
Yeah, it just creates a little bit of indecision for the linebackers.
Yes.
And,
shallow action.
Before you know it, they're always chasing, the Y cross, the Y shallow, or the Y over. He's either underneath you, already past you, or he's behind you, already past you. And you're trying to flip your hips and, turn and run, and you get the quarterback on the run, and the good ones that can deliver the ball accurately on the run and on time. It's a first down, and then some in many times.
Seriously, I don't know how people play linebacker, but that's another story.
Sure.
People talk about this position being the toughest, that position being the toughest, but in modern college football, linebackers are asked to do so much. It's crazy. Getting back to your point, what Ryan Day has morphed is not the right term, evolved into. Urban Meyer had for want of another term, his boot up everybody's backside from the time he stepped into the building. I'm talking about coaches, players, support personnel, etc. Nothing was ever a status quo. What are you doing to get better? How are you? And Ryan Day is his own man, but I've seen Ryan Day, especially this year, become that demanding guy. I mean, he was always demanding. It's hard to explain this because we're talking about degrees, right?
Yes.
Degrees of evolution. And, but this year, man, there's been a look in his eye, just like Brandon Ennis said, there's been a look in his eye really since that loss last year to Michigan. I think is what you meant to call him a while ago.
Yes.
Or I think it'd might be pronounced without the M, Ickagan. But the bottom line is there's been a look in his eye ever since then that's different. And,
yes,
no excuses kind of like thing. Show me where you're getting better. Cajole when you got to cajole, but mainly keep kicking that boot. And not that, you can still have fluke plays on Saturday and Ohio State lose this game, right? There's all kinds of things that happen in a game that you can only get a team ready for, but then they have to go out and execute it. And I think that's what a lot of people lose sight of sometimes. But over time, if you lose 4 of them in a row, there is something missing, right?
Yeah. And I believe what you have now in the evolution of Ryan Day is you don't have a coach that's desperately trying to find what's missing.
Right.
He's confidently saying, this is how we do things. This is the best path that I believe for me to lead this group of coaches, and then our coaches lead this group of men to go up in this game with the stakes, that are extremely high, and play our best and compete our butts off, and fight. That'll be enough to win a football game, in this case against that team up north.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like he said, after the game on Saturday against Rutgers, this year has gone by so fast, yet it seems like the Texas game was a long time ago.
Yeah.
We're talking about year and a season, 2 different things, because all of a sudden now it's Christmas, possibly Christmas Eve again, right? And
yeah, and I'll sorry to interrupt, but the one thing just popped into my head, and I think it's what, for Coach Day and his evolution, but also in many cases, and it happens like this every year, but I think like so many guys getting drafted and so many guys leaving, that veteran laden team that we had last year and their lack of success against that team up north, well, they're gone now.
Yeah.
And, and I think, it's like the Caden Currys and the Caden McDonalds and the Kenyatta Jacksons, while they were, like rotational players last year, they're the dudes now. So, right. Yeah. So many cases, because we had seen Jack Sawyer and JTT and Tyleek and Ty Hamilton for almost 3 years, against that team up north. Well, like they're gone now. And I know that you can't wipe away the last 4 years, and I don't want to do that or discount, the successes of those guys, because it was immense, winning a national championship. But as it relates to this game, it's like Caden Curry's never lost to Michigan as a starter on defense. Matt Patricia, you know, and I'm sure he knows this, but like Matt Patricia's 0-0 against that team up north.
Yeah.
And that's a fresh perspective to take into this football game and maybe have that breathe into some of the guys that are going to be the dudes in big moments in this game for the very first time.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a perspective that, that I look at, that sometimes it's, and I'll say that as it relates to, high school ball. We're in, the state semifinals. We have a starting quarterback who's a first-year starter playing this game for the first time. Yeah. Last year we lost in this very same round, but he was not the QB. Yeah. So it's just, you learn from some of that lack of success by others that have come before you. But I've never lost in this round, and I've never lost in Michigan in this role. So it's a fresh perspective with a leader, as we continue to talk about it, that is more businesslike, more dialed than we've ever seen before. And there's going to be a trickle-down effect, into the coaches and players. But also, a lot of these players can go, dude, I didn't even play last year, but I've been balling this year. Like, take that foot forward into this game and go, F these guys. You know what I mean? They're not going to stop us if we go do our job.
Yeah. Wait till I'm in charge. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
Things will be different.
Exactly.
We're going to see, man. I mean,
we are.
Hey, Matt, let's go back to your official visit with your son, Mason. Obviously pride, you had to be busting, as the old saying goes, to a certain extent, but take me back to that meeting with Ryan Day, if you would. I mean, as much as you can, feel comfortable about, but what is that kind of meeting like? I mean, where Ryan, like we talked about, Ohio State didn't offer Mason until they felt comfortable about offering Mason the football player, not Mason the legacy.
Yep.
Right? As the old saying goes in Animal House, the legacy from Harrisburg,
Yeah.
But
sure. So here's
a little bit of that conversation. Man, it had to be cool
even prior to the Ryan Day meeting, and I'll say the one other really cool thing is, and I said this before last week, is I've played in a lot of Buckeye games, been to a lot of Buckeye games. Mason's been a lot of Buckeye games with his dad, not as a recruit and as a fan, and then eventually as a recruit. But last week against UCLA, first time as a commit, and this game against Rutgers on his official visit, second game as a commit. What was also really cool, as a part of the weekend, is all 5 of the 2026 offensive linemen, Mason being one of them, and the other 4, were all at the Rutgers game. So Sam Greer from Hoban, Landry Breed from Mentor, Mason Wilhelm from St. Ed's, Max Riley from Avon Lake, and Tucker Smith from Arizona was in with his family. So, and again, I'm sure either, Mason or myself or somebody's going to be lambasting social media so folks and fans can see these dudes. But I wanted Mason to build that brotherhood and get to know these guys because, those are going to be his dudes for the next 4 or 5 years, competing with and competing against, for that opportunity to be out there on a Saturday. But to transition to the meeting with Ryan Day, first of all, a lot of and we didn't need, the kind of loving that another recruit might need. So all of our meetings were 15 to 20 minutes, right? Because we know Ryan Day, but in some cases to sit down and have this moment with him and Tyler Bowen and some of the other folks was fantastic, and they were great. But you could kind of tell, like, while we felt the love, part of their brain was on to that team up north. And we were cool with that because I'm a legacy and I've played in this game. So I'm like, man, if y'all got to go. We got what we need, right? Yeah. But to dig into that meeting as it relates to Mason, and this is just a little bit of backstory, is while Ohio State consistently over the course of time has always been contacting Mason and staying in touch with Mason, and I get it, and I've sent a text message to Tyler Bowen about his upfront honesty throughout, say, the last 7 months on where Mason's at and how he sees a path to this happening. But that's, but you got to check some of these boxes, and I see the path, but it also, like, I'm not going to guarantee anything. So, and so that's where Mason, kind of plays with a chip on his shoulder, and he's hungry, and he wanted to level up, and he wanted to prove people wrong, and he wanted to, again, play better for himself and play better for his team as a senior on this potential state championship run, which we're obviously still playing. the coolest thing, and even Mason and I connected while watching whatever game was on, maybe even just the end of the Browns game last night, was, and I just asked him, because it's it was a long day, a long 24 48 hours, was, eventually it's like you exchange pleasantries and talk about the excitement of having Mason, and then we had it from Bowen, consistently, as a Mason as a commit. Then we had it from Coach Day on a brief phone call, and Mason committed to Coach Day. But then sitting with him face to face, and it was, mom on one side, dad on the other, Mason in the middle, and it was as if, I was just some random dude. And Coach Day looking at Mason going, your dad, means a lot to this university, means a lot to this football program. He's an amazing guy and a great dad, but as it relates to you and this opportunity here, had nothing to do with it. And it had all to do with your hard work, you as a smart player, what we see in you, the type of, culture that you're coming from at St. Ed's, and, and dragging that into this brotherhood and this culture here. And like really just conveying that level of excitement they have about Mason as a player. And this is, again, going backwards really quick, but, Mason, in many cases through his recruiting process, has kind of conveyed that, I kind of want to blaze my own trail, like whether Ohio State comes through or not, even if they offer me at some juncture, I might just go, that's not for me. And I was like, dude, that's okay, right? It's, first of all, that place is not for everybody.
Yeah.
But ultimately hearing that sentiment from Coach Day and Coach Bowen about earning it, completely separate from me. And that's the other thing I'll say for anybody that thinks, Ohio State's not doing favors for anybody when you're the number one team in the country and you're expected to win every game. You just can't. And say it's not my son, say it's someone, you can't just blow a scholarship on a guy because you think his family's great. You know what I mean? Otherwise, he's just a PWA preferred walk-on, right? You're not going to make that type of investment, when there's other great players both in the state of Ohio and around this nation that are also probably as deserving. But the big picture, along with Mason's hard work throughout his senior year, is really what led to this opportunity. And it's also for us as a family, the little bit of insight. It was like, did he always kind of want to be here? Sure. But if it didn't happen, that was okay. But it was on specific terms about, and that's where we said back in March when we went on a visit, I go, I said, hey, listen, to Bowen and Ryan Day face to face, it's like, he's either good enough or he's not. Yeah. And if he's not right now, that's cool. Perfect. We know exactly where we stand, and he knows exactly what he needs to do. And I think what's most satisfying for him and for me as his dad and as a former Buckeye player is the kid has worked his ass off. He's playing both ways. He's playing 85%, or he's playing every offensive snap and 75, 80% of every defensive snap as a selfless team player, because it's what he needs to do to help our team win. Yeah. And that's what Ohio State wants in the Scarlet and Gray each and every Saturday, developing in their program.
And as Ryan said many times, and Urban said this too, they're not bringing you in. Forget about the legacy aspect. They're bringing you in having expectations for you, meaning player. They're bringing you in to eventually play, not be a placeholder.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think the most satisfying thing that came out of the weekend was, Mason having that bro time with his other dudes and meeting some of the other commits. Nick Latour from Lebanon, the tight end, was also in, who's a fresh flip from Louisville over. So just meet his boys and allow me to just, step. I'm just a guy. I'm just a dad who also played football here. And I'm over here and Mason's over there doing his thing, right? Yeah. And then also just getting some of the, the answers question that we have about being, a new commit on, because it's like, we're going to compete this Saturday or Friday, hopefully win, playing in, in a state championship. And then he's going to, sign on the Thursday before he plays the state championship on a Friday. And then fast forward, 30, 34 days as an early and mid-year enrollee, he's going to be on campus, And I think what's most exciting about all of it is, and this is what is for me learning about it, because he's not a strength coach that I had, but like the ops of what Mick Marotti and his staff and that weight room and the work that's done in that room is as much of what I want for Mason, because that's, that first 18 months is going to be with him and Tyler Bowen, on the football field. But, the competitive aspect and the toughness and the family knit, that gets developed in the weight room, because that's who you spend most of your time with, because So I'm excited about all of it, and it's Ohio State did a great job, the best they can. But last thing I'll say for both for you and for those viewing is like on Sunday morning, everyone was very very nice, very hospitable to us, but there was an expedited level of let's get this kid in, let's get this kid out, because we've got to go be in meetings. We've got to go, we'd get Marcus Johnson, the assistant line coach, for 5 minutes, and he goes, I got to go get back to my office and get back on that team up north. So It is a completely dedicated staff to turn over every stone and learn as much as you can as coaches to then give that to the players so they can go out and continue this thing they're going with, no losses.
All right, last thing for you. Speaking of that being expedited, we've been talking for a while now. My last question for you is, what will we be talking about a week from today on another Xonday with at WilhelX?
I mean, again, definitely, I think we're going to be talking about Ryan Day and, I'll say Ryan Day getting it done against that team up north. I think we're going to be talking about, and then as it relates to the players and the execution standpoint, I think we're going to be talking about the defensive game plan and the execution put together by Matt Patricia and the defense. And I also think we're going to be talking about on the other side of the ball. I think we're going to be talking about Julian Sayin and his ability to run the offense. And what does that mean? That means everything that we've seen from this point forward, that from up to this point of the efficiency, the execution, the lack of turnovers, the calm, cool, collective aspect of Julian Sayin, that no moment, whether that's week 1 against Texas or, week, 12, up in Ann Arbor, are not too big for this kid, for him to just go deliver the football and run this offense and score in the red zone.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. The incomparable at WilhelX. Next week we'll be back to the regularly scheduled spelling of things, but Xonday with at WilhelX was that sounds kind of weird when you say Xonday, but Xondays with at WilhelX.
Xondays.
Hey, your weekly wash.
That's right.
Appreciate you, man. And
my pleasure, man.
And it'll be interesting. I mean, what a moment for a lot of guys in that program, but definitely you could see what it could mean. I mean, if you're going to rip Ryan Day when things don't go right, he will be, if things do go right, he will be, it will be necessary to give him his just due, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one last thought for me is, had we won maybe, say 1, 2, or 3 of the last 4, we'd probably be talking right now about how we're just going to go up there, we're going to beat them, and are we going to be distracted by the Big Ten championship and what that means soon after it, right? Yeah. And I think if you can find, any like glimmer of, of hope in this approach, is this really allows you to, for 7 days, well now 6 days, be all in on this game where nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Because Indianapolis is not guaranteed if you don't take care of business this week. I guess in theory, the CFP is potentially, a thing, but you don't know who you're going to play or where you're going to play or where you're going to be seated if you don't take care of business this weekend. So everything is blurred, into the future beyond this Saturday at 12 noon. So you are really all in, for this game because of what the last 4 years have felt like to Coach Day, his staff, and these players, that have lived it, to be all in and all hands on deck to go get this win up in Ann Arbor.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the incomparable at WilhelX. Thank you very much.
You got it, bro. You got it.
At brings it.
WilhelX.
At is the first 2 letters of attack.
That's right.
At is the first 2 letters of attaboy.
Atta baby.
Yeah, we could go on and on there, but I won't, because this thing's already gone on, so to speak. He's right, man. It finally comes down to execution, the basic stuff of getting the job done, not losing your focus. And like he said, that is a silver lining to losing 4 in a row. And the fact of what a season you've had so far is it allows you the luxury of just zeroing in on what's coming Saturday. Not that they weren't going to do it in the first place, but the intensity promises to be there. But will it be there? We're not going to know that till 3:30 on Saturday afternoon. Agreed?
3:45.
Yeah. But anyway, with that in mind,
let's go.
With that in mind, let's get to some sound from Carson Hinzman after the game the other day. Ohio State center suddenly turned blonde center after losing a bet with his good buddy Luke Montgomery. You know, they were co-offensive players of the week several weeks ago, and then all of a sudden Luke was the offensive player of the week. I think the UCLA game. I think that's right. And so Carson lost the bet. One of them, whoever wasn't, was going to have to dye their hair blonde. So finally somebody just puts it in black and white. You got to win. You got to score more points than the other team. That's what football has always been about. We can get caught up in rushing yardage. Did you outrush them? Mm-hmm. Did you outpass them? Rushing yardage is so intensely guarded as the secret to still success in any kind of football. But you know what? If you score more points than them and you don't outrush them, who cares, right?
No. Did you outplay them?
Did you outplay them is the final analysis. But you can outplay somebody, still get beat. You can throw a pick six. You can do all kinds of things. You can have a fumble that gets taken back for a touchdown. I mean, there are all kinds of ways you can steal points in any kind of athletic endeavor, including football. But the bottom line is, all we're going to really be interested in on Saturday at 3:30, maybe earlier than that, if this game, depends on how this game is played. Although with those 3-minute timeouts, TV timeouts,
it's Fox. Baby.
No offense to your ilk, your former ilk, but what a joke.
Well, come on.
But anyway,
I was a local TV.
You were still a yokel.
I was not.
You might have been a local yokel.
TV.
You might have been a local yokel, but you were still affiliate, just called an affiliate.
Yep, that's true.
But the bottom line is we're going to know, did they win or not? So we'll get more into that as this week develops. But one last thing before we go. Mm-hmm. One of our good friends, I mean, he's a good friend of mine because I've known him for like a quarter of a century, more than that, is Jerry Emig. Is the outgoing Ohio State football sports information, or just sports information director, communications director for Ohio State, and his major always has been football. And he had his final home game. You'll hear what Ross Bjork says about that in a minute, about emphasize the fact it's not his last game, but had his final home game as in that role. And so Ross Bjork honored Jerry after the game was over, before the Ryan Day press conference started, honored him appropriately. And like I said, I mean, I've known this guy for a long time, and he's been through some ups and downs and then ups in that role. But let's get finally to what Ross Bjork had to say to and about Jerry Emig.
Last week we honored a Jerry, right? Jerry Lucas. And Jerry's a legend among legends. And today we get to honor another legend in Ohio State athletics, Jerry Emig. Dedicated career, a true professional in so many ways. Just does a great job of covering the local media, the national media, has relationships throughout. It's been a blessing for me to work with Jerry over the last year and a half. So on behalf of the entire athletic department, Jerry Emig, forever a Buckeye, thank you for your 23 years of dedicated service. That's a good SID day. That was his quote. So what you have to do, though, is you got to fill this up with all your Buckeyes from your Buckeye tree, because this is what this is made for. So, Jerry, thank you on behalf of Ohio State Athletics and the university for all the years.
I've already had my little chat with you guys, but I just want to say I feel like the most fortunate person in the world. I've got family, I've got faith, I've got friends, and I've got the most badass football program in the country that I've been able to support for 23 years, and I love them. And I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Let's go 6 more games from here. 6 more games.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for everything you've done, not only for Ohio State, but for me and my family. I think about when we made the transition from being an assistant to head coach and all the different things that we've had to navigate along the way. And you've always been steady and fair. And, you have the respect of certainly everybody you work with, but I know everybody out here as well. So I just want to make sure, publicly, I thank you for everything you've done. So thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Absolutely.
It goes beyond the working relationship. I walked into the presser, Ryan Day's presser, 3 weeks ago. I don't remember when. And Jerry said, Clay, how are your parents doing? I know you were making a lot of trips to South Carolina. I said, yeah, my dad passed a couple weeks ago at this point. And it just meant the world to me that he cared enough to say that. And he was so huge when I retired, which has been a year and a half ago. He surprised me at the going away with this Buckeye helmet and had a ABC 6. Just the little things that mean so much besides putting up with me for 31, 32 years. So yeah. Jerry's, he's just a gem. He's a class act.
Yeah. He's a pretty even keel, about as even keel as you can get. He can get upset, if you really broach rules or whatever you want to call it, guidelines. But he's one of the more placid, laid back kind of individuals ever dealt with, but there's a zeal to him too about things he, is impassioned about, including his son, who's had his struggles, and another son played lacrosse, daughter right on down the line. He loves his family, and his wife was there. She was, she was quite proud of her man and stuff, and deservedly so. One quick little anecdote I told after at a little thing we hit up in the press box, but you take these turns in life, right? That bring you down the river. And this is apropos because he was, when he was going to Murray State in Murray, Kentucky, he got a job one summer as a deckhand on a sand dredging boat in the Mississippi River Basin. And
that's some work, brother.
That's work, meaning he was primarily what's known as an oiler, which means, you can be told to do almost anything, but in between you're squirting oil into machinery to make sure it keeps running, and then you also had to help unload tugboats that would come along to bring on supplies and things like that. Like he said, he only fell into the water 5 times, he said. 5 times. Now, this was his primary base op then with that dredge boat was on the Yazoo River, which runs by Greenville and Yazoo City.
The Delta,
in the Delta region, which, by the way, people don't understand. The Delta region starts up there. Basically, it starts around Memphis and goes down. That's
Tunica. On down.
Exactly. Tunica. That place put itself on the map for a little while when it opened a casino, but that's another story. Right. But the bottom line is, but he was working on a sand dredge, which would take sand from here and put it way off over there. Yeah. And then, of course, the next high water or whatever, you'd have to go do it all again and stuff. You know how that works. Yep. But he was working with these 2 guys. I think one was named Clem, he said. They were 2 brothers. And the other, he couldn't remember the name of the other guy because it was his other brother named Clem, from that show, but the Newhart show. But the bottom line is they were taken by Jerry because Jerry, I'm sure his personality shone through with them, as I called him, the truth from Duluth. He's lived everywhere like you. Yeah. Grew up in Duluth, Minnesota, went to school at Murray State. His first big job was at Temple as sports information director under when John Chaney was the basketball coach there. And then he came here in the mid-90s. And, of course, he had that little falling out or little situation because of a thing to do with Richard Lewis, who also became a friend of mine. But then he came back in his second iteration as the football sports information director. But anyway, these guys, Clem and his other brother named Clem, is he said they were about as redneck as you can get. And but near the end of that summer stint, they found out what Jerry was making, and they said, "Dang, son, you're going to be making $300 a week here before you know it. You don't even have to go back to school. You don't need to go to college anymore." And of course, in the back of his mind, Jerry is thinking, "Dude, I don't want to be doing this the rest of my life, Clem."
Get me out of here, Clem.
But anyway, everybody has a Clem story. I've got about 15 of them in my background, but we'll get to maybe some of those later in this series. But congratulations to Jerry Emig. He's still got to go to March 1st. He's already promised me the
That's
first.
right.
He's already promised me the first. What do you want to call it? Podcast interview. We'll see if that happens, because he said he plans on March the 2nd to be headed toward Florida for an extended vacay.
Nice.
But anyway, Jerry Emig, salute once again. I saluted him there in the press conference also, because he deserves it. Everybody has people who have critics. We all have critics. I know I do. Clay, you don't have critics, do you?
I have a few.
Yeah, there you go.
You're going to run into
Too few to mention.
in the public forum.
You had too few to mention. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, until Wednesday, I'm Tim May. We're probably going to have John U. Bacon on Wednesday. If that's a Wednesday show. One of my favorite people of all time. But until Wednesday, I'm Tim May. That's the incomparable Clay Hall. We will see you then.